Live from Washington, I'm Aisha Tanzeem and you're watching Access Point. Hello and welcome. Pakistan's precarious economic and security situation, coupled with decades of bad policies, have led to major brain drain from the country. The last few years may have been especially bad when the best and the brightest are either fleeing the country or want to flee. So let's get right to our guests to find out what is happening, how bad is it, and we'll also get into some of the implications that people may not think about, and finally, what, if anything, needs to be done about it. Joining me in our Washington studio is Sufyan Ahmed. Excuse me, Sufyan Yousefi. We talk a lot, so that's why he's whispering in my ear. Sufyan Yousefi, who's the campus recruiting lead for Deloitte. We also have a Pakistani student joining us in studio. Asim Mia is at George Mason University. And on phone with us from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia is one of our Facebook fans who actually told us about this topic and this problem, Mohammad Awais Ali. He's here from Riyadh. Gentlemen, welcome to Access Point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sufyan, let me get right to the topic because a lot of passion about this topic. We've had overwhelming response on our social media pages. 300 comments per post, and we had a lot of posts, and we'll get to some of those comments. No jobs, no security. These are the obvious reasons. Are there any other factors leading to the brain drain?
Yes, I think that jobs and security is a symptom of the overall economic situation, yes, but I think students are also very interested in working in dynamic fields, which lead them to something more than just a job and more into a career and a path and an industry. Absent the industry, you don't see a point to which you can take your career. So, and the limitation of sectors as well, and I think we'll talk more about that, but absent media, banking, and telecom, there's not a lot of opportunities for students to get into and do new things.
Okay, I want to bring in some experiences. So, Asim, let me start with you. Tell us about you. What do you do here at George Mason?
Well, I'm a student of criminology major, and looking forward to get into the law school, hopefully. That's pretty much it right now. And I'm a part of our criminology research department.
And I'll come back to you to find out whether you do plan to go back or not. But let me welcome another guest. Dr. Nadeem ul Haq has just joined us from Lahore, Pakistan on Skype. Dr. Haq has been a former chair of the the Planning Commission of Pakistan, also the former head of the Pakistan Institute for Development Economics. Dr. Haq, welcome to Access Point.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Haq, what we were talking about was there are some obvious reasons: inflation, unemployment, lack of security. Are there any other economic factors that we are missing here that's leading to brain drain, or as you write, the flight of human capital?
I think the flight of human capital has been taking place in Pakistan throughout our history. It's got nothing to do with the terrorism or law and order situation. It's been happening throughout our history. That's the first thing to note. We do not want to keep our brains in this country. That's where we should begin.
Okay, and that's a major statement. Tell us, why do we not want to keep our brains in the country?
Most important thing is the cultural factor. We do not, we are still, best way to put it, I guess, is we are still a feudal culture. We're still a very rural culture. We do not appreciate merit. We have absolutely no room for merit here. And whoever's partnered with us also does not want to cultivate merit. Take the US, for example. The US State Department or USAID only wants to recognize hierarchy. They don't want to recognize merit in the country. So the country has not established a culture of merit yet. You must also remember, we are the only country in the world that does not recognize its own Nobel Prize winner.
Yes, yes, we are the only country that does not. And as you said, we care more about hierarchy, feudalism than merit. Let me introduce some people who are joining us, who are young professionals. From Riyadh, we have our guest. Can you introduce yourself? Tell me exactly, what do you do there?
So basically in Riyadh, I'm working as a business development manager in a multinational company over here. So before that, I was in London. So from London, I have done my MBA in strategic marketing. So afterward, I go back and stay there for 11 months. And unfortunately, there was no job. There's no opportunity. So afterward, I just moved to Riyadh, and I'm currently
And,
in
and
Riyadh.
Mohammed, when you were talking to me on Facebook, also said that you have a lot of friends or acquaintances who are working illegally in Europe rather than going back to Pakistan, and they're all college graduates.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Mom.
exactly. As I know, one of my mate is working is as a taxi driver, and he was graduated from the King's College, and he spent is a lot of money on his education, but he don't want to go back because of the lack of opportunities, the lack of security. There's no stability over there.
Okay, thank you very much. Stay with us, Mohammed. I also want to read a couple of Facebook comments. We had an overwhelming response, as I said. Amir Hayat Bhandara wrote, he's one of the people who's for staying in Pakistan. If everyone will be moving abroad, who'll serve the people of Pakistan? I've had many chances to move abroad for work or settlement, but I'm here to work for the common public. Whereas Sahar Mirza writes, well, I'll be a textile engineer after 2 more semesters. If I look around here in Pakistan, you have no electricity. The textile mills are mostly shut down. Everyone wants to excel in life. I see no future for me in Pakistan. Dr. Haq, while there are a couple of people who say we should stay back in Pakistan, a lot of people want to leave, and you said that there's no... Pakistanis don't really care about merit that much. Can Pakistan survive like that?
Well, we've put in 65 years like that, and we haven't done badly. I mean, people without merit in this country are doing extremely well. People without merit are prime ministers, presidents. They've risen up in every sector of the world. So quite frankly, we'll continue for another God knows how long. The rest of the world wants to keep bailing us out, and fine, we live on that bailout, and that's fine.
Yeah, but the rest of the world will stop bailing us out. I mean, the last Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, said, if you don't tax your own people, why do you want our aid? I think the rest of the world is going to catch up to that.
I hope you remember your own saying. A long time ago, I heard it, that, sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words, these are empty words. Nobody means it. And nobody's actually going to allow a reform to happen in this country. Nobody wants merit in this country, least of all us. We don't want merit in this country, and it's visible by the fact that we actually do not recognize our own Nobel Prize winner. We do not recognize anybody who's achieved any merit in this country. We respect hierarchy. You take a look at the names of roads here. You take a look at the names of airports here, whatever. We don't value merit, and that's a simple proposition that we have to accept to begin with.
Okay, Sufyan, you yourself were a student when you came here, and you wanted to go back, but you decided to stay. Tell us a little bit what led to that decision.
Well, there are a number of factors, and I think the most important one is for people like me who hail from middle class in Pakistan. Right, my father worked in an organization. He was a mid-level executive, and he did extremely well. But he had 4 children, and we all had to go to school at some point. I agree with your other guest talking about the lack of merit recognition. But at the same time, it's also simply a question of available options. When you look at the number of universities, good universities, decent universities, you can count them on either one of your hands.
Right.
Yes, they're not, for a country of 180 million, whatever the number is today, you don't have the equal number of institutions, good institutions. So the first thing is, it's very difficult to get into a good university in Pakistan because there's only a handful. So then you have to look outside, number one. The other thing is that, the available financial options. Even if you do get in, would you be able to pay for it? Private schools, for example, there's some good private schools you can get in.
But will you be able to pay for it abroad, though? Universities here in the US are very expensive.
There are a number of scholarships. Like, for example, I was able to get a scholarship. There was no chance for me to get into a top university and get a scholarship
in
Pakistan, and I was able to do that here. But even with the scholarship, there's significant costs associated with going to school abroad. Now, for me, it was a financial matter. I did my internship in a huge organization in Pakistan, and they accepted me a job offer, but I calculated it would have taken me 15 years to pay back my student loans if I had taken that job in Pakistan. And by that really it was a highly paid job according to Pakistani standards.
So
But
financial reasons.
financial and growth as well, right? I mean, once you've studied here, once you have worked here, interned here for some time, you realize the difference in the caliber and how much recognition you get and the opportunities that you have. Do you want to play in a smaller market, or do you want to play in a big market, right?
So basically a better life, better career choices. Dr. Haq, if that's the situation, what would take some students back? I mean, what would take some Pakistani students back to Pakistan?
Look, people come back to Pakistan all the time. I came back too. I worked for 30 years in the fund. I've taught at American universities. I came back. We come back for the wrong reasons. We come back because we have, well, I won't go into that. We come back, yes. But the question is really truly that, quite frankly, Sufyan just talked about Pakistani universities. Look, Pakistani universities are sadly a mess. Pakistani universities lack professors. We make do with part-time faculty. Most of our universities do not have a full faculty. In fact, I would say hardly any university has any faculty at all, right? At the same time, there are no job opportunities for people with merit. The bureaucracy here is that the British colonials left behind. It's a 150-year-old bureaucracy which has not experienced reform. They take one exam at the age of 26, and after that, they're guaranteed to rise to the top of the country no matter what they do. Even if they fail, even if they're corrupt, they'll rise to the top of the country. They are the custodian of the merit system. They don't want any merit at all. They put in artificial barriers to bring meritorious people into the system. There is no meritorious guy who can even come in as a professor. I can quote you chapter and verse on the various chaired professors in the West, like Ayub Umayya, like God knows what. All the people, competent people who wanted to come back to the country, they were told, no, sorry, we will not give you a professorship in a university. Ayub Umayya, for example, had a professorship, and all the American, he was a professor at NIH. He had published books, etc., but they said, no, you cannot come back here. And there are stories, legions of stories like this. The question is very simply what you have to face up to, that we've got a system here that does not recognize merit. We must change the system. When I was in the Planning Commission, I talked about it at length. I proposed the reform that was necessary to make. Unfortunately, we have to rally behind that reform. Bring in merit. Hillary Clinton was wrong. The issue is not taxation. The issue is merit.
So tell us a little bit about the reform agenda that you proposed when you were at the Planning Commission.
It's very simple. We have to get the civil service, just like Maggie Thatcher fixed your civil service, Tony Blair fixed your civil service. We have to fix the civil service of Pakistan. It should get out of Lord Macaulay's 19th century, come into the 21st century. It should stop controlling everything. It should allow merit to come in. The university should be independent of the civil service. Right now, the universities are beholden. You cannot appoint a professor without the civil service saying okay. No. You cannot appoint a vice chancellor without the prime minister saying okay. So there is no autonomy in the system. There's no merit in the system. There's no decentralization system. Everything is controlled by the prime minister's office. That kind of centralization is inimical to merit.
Do you think privatization may help?
Look, privatization, I'm from the University of Chicago. I'm totally a free market guy. Privatization will always help. But you can't privatize Oxford and Cambridge. There are certain things that you can't privatize, certain things that will always require government subsidy. There are some things that, like the steel mill, should be privatized, absolutely true. But there are some things that have to be managed with good governance. And we have to make sure that we have professionals in our government, just like you made sure in the 70s and 80s.
Okay, well, let me come to you again, Sufyan. You go from campus to campus to campus recruiting young graduates for your company, and you deal with a lot of Pakistani students. What are you hearing in campuses across America?
Well, a couple of things. First is I agree with Dr. Haq coming back to capacity building. So essentially what he's saying is you have a vested interest, right? So what do you do to fix the system? From my perspective, I'm very curious on why Pakistani companies, big multinationals, big banks, are not investing into the universities. I'm not saying that they're not, but not to the extent that they should, right? They take the easy route out. They take the foreign graduates returning, give them the higher level jobs, and then the whole system starts again. I'm talking about exclusively the private sector. Now, what do I see? Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of Pakistani students. That's the truth. When I go in and when I go from campus to campus, the number of Pakistani students are not representative of Pakistan's population in the world. 7th largest nation or something to that extent in terms of people, but you don't see them represented in the talent pool, which is very, very disheartening. But the other thing is they feel that they would be barred from participating in the campus interviews or getting into the universities that they want to get into. And I don't have the numbers, but I've seen over the years, I've been doing it 6 years for my firm, and I've seen the numbers decline year over year. The other thing is, even if you do see students, right, you would see them either in the medical field, because Pakistan produces a lot of doctors, great doctors, right? They come in here, do their residency, stay here. But you wouldn't see them in technology as much as you would like to see them. The other thing which is very curious to me is you would only see male representation from Pakistan. So if a student manages to come from Pakistan, get through the visa process, lands an admission here in a good school, it's solely male dominated.
You raised a very important point. I want to come to you, Dr. Haq, which is something that Sufyan said, which is the Pakistani student population is also becoming less and less over the years. Are we in a cycle of decline? The universities are not working, the student population is not getting the kind of quality education that they'll need to go abroad to compete in a broader global market, and therefore cannot go abroad, and there are no jobs at home?
Absolutely correct. I think Sufyan is 100% right. I've noticed myself. I've been crying out loud. There's a huge human capital crisis in this country. I think the bigger crisis in this country, bigger than the balance of payments, other crisis, the human capital crisis. When I was in the Planning Commission, I was trying to recruit for Vice Chancellor various places. I could not find competent people. Now, why is that? Look, our leaders don't value professors in good universities. They'd much rather build a road and show off that they've got a road. They are all focused on hardware. I kept telling them in the Planning Commission, we need to fix the software of this country. We've got enough hardware. But the whole world, but I don't want to fault our leaders. Even DFID, even USAID, all the donor organizations also want to build roads, dams, railways. Professors, nobody has the time for. Now we've got a whole generation of 90 million kids who are being raised without professors. Let me tell you, I spend a lot of time talking to university kids. I go out deliberately lecturing, that's my profession. When I talk to the kids, I tell you, I am so depressed. Brings tears to my eyes. These kids are not prepared to compete in the international world. They just have not faced globalization and global pool of knowledge yet, because their professors are not competent. Now, when I go and say this to the powers that be, they don't have the ears for this. They're not ready to listen to this, because they'd much rather be building a road. And of course, when the foreigners come, they'd much rather be sitting at the road and giving them congratulations than worry about a puny professor or some kids learning. So yes, I agree with Sufyan. We are not yielding up enough kids that are competent. I know in economics, for example, my profession, there are not enough people at all.
And Dr. Haq, I don't have any scientific data, but from what I see, and I'll tell you, it breaks my heart too. We have a lot of people approach us on social media. They're asking for help. They're students asking for help. They're trying to get a job. They don't know how to approach someone to ask for help. They do it in a way that I know if they approached, let's say, a European or American or German or anybody else, they will totally turn them off. And I know these kids are reaching out for help, and they don't know how to do it.
So I think we're talking about universities and higher education, but I think the feeder system into those universities and higher education is what? Your primary and secondary schools, right? Who took advantage of that vacuum? Because we're talking about here mostly people who have access to education, get into universities, or don't get into universities, people like me who were able to come to the US. It's not a cheap thing to do. It's very expensive, right?
It's very expensive.
So let's talk about the 90 million kids that Dr. Haq just referred to. They don't even have access to primary education. Forget about higher level education. Who took advantage of that? The foreign investors from the Middle East started opening all these madrasas. We said, fine, take our kids, teach them whatever you feel like doing, because they're going to get a free meal. I mean, when it comes to not being able to nourish yourself, just in terms of nutrition, how are you going to even talk about education?
Okay, let me take it further. Now let's get to the people who are here or who have graduated. People like Asim, people like Mohammed, who's on phone with us from Riyadh. Asim, are you considering going back to Pakistan?
Well, considering if my family is a businessman family and my family has already established a business over there, and I belong to a family where an upper middle class family. So if I look from a business perspective, yes, I would go back because I have established business, and my business have all the resources. The government, our economic system and our government system is a kind of government system which helps the upper level or the upper middle class people.
Okay.
But if you talk about in the job perspective, if I wasn't belong to a businessman family, I would never.
You'd never consider going back. Now I know. Now, Mohammed, you in Riyadh, you said that you went back, lived in Pakistan for 11 years, found no job, and finally moved to Riyadh. Is that accurate?
So basically, I was in Lahore. It's about 11 months. It's no years. So I was looking for a job for 11 months, and I was really shocked. No one even called me for interview as well. And afterward, I just moved to Islami Riyadh. And so when I come here, so I realized basically, so a lot of doctors, a lot of engineers from Pakistan is coming to Saudi Arabia. So basically, they are saying their salaries are very less. There is no opportunity along with the, job security. So everyone
leaving
want
Pakistan.
to come
Mohammed, I'll come back to you. The point that you raised, let me ask Dr. Haq. Dr. Haq, so now moving from, we're not educating our children, they're not able to compete in the global marketplace, but those that graduate and have degrees, we can't give them jobs. It's a huge problem. Doctors moving from Pakistan to the Middle East. Are we doing anything about keeping at least those people in the country?
Quite frankly, no. Because the point is, unless we reform our systems, I don't mean just, for example, take this. We've got a huge energy shortage right now. We've got a huge crisis. We've lost 20% of GDP in the energy crisis in the last 5 years, which is not a small number, which is a huge number. And yet, people like myself been crying hoarse. We've got enough good people outside. Can't we get energy managers who can manage our system better? There seems to be no demand from our leaders, from the powers that be, our civil servants, etc., to hire good managers. Sufyan just talked about the private sector. Unfortunately, Sufyan, the private sector is also not a private sector of merit. Yeah. Remember, in Pakistan, our industrial organization, if you go look at the Competition Commission reports, our industrial organization is based on oligopoly, cartels, etc. We don't have competition. The government has been benefiting our industrial sector through SROs, the famous SROs, and all manner of subsidy to create a non-competitive private sector. A non-competitive private sector that's earning monopoly profits to the government is not interested in doing the right thing. And that's a tragedy. We have to change the system wholesale, bring merit into it, then change will happen. If we don't recognize merit, we don't want to recognize merit, then we can't do anything.
So that's the 800-pound gorilla. How do we bring merit into it, Sufyan?
I think it's got to start from the top, right? And here we are sitting, and I'm joining, and I'm actually championing that whole cause of criticizing the system. And I know it's problematic, but now I am in a position to change or have some influence over the system. But what am I choosing to do with it, right? I mean, I engage with Pakistani students on a regular basis, both here in the United States as well as in Pakistan. And I'm very interested in them developing because, if the stature of the country raises, it's good for me as well, right? I feel good about where I came from, and I owe a lot to Pakistan. I am a product of the Pakistani system. I really am. If I can do significantly okay in the US, Wall Street and all that, then they should have the same access and opportunity to that as well. Now, every campus I go to, I talk to not only Pakistani students, Indian students, students from different parts of the world, and I say, now that you are here, now that you've landed a great job, what have you done for somebody who's back home? If each one of us...
So the diaspora.
Exactly. If each one of us took responsibility for one individual, and especially a female, and I keep on coming back to females because you change a female's life and you change a family. You help a male or, then you change one person.
And today is the day when Malala is launching her book. She didn't win the Nobel Prize, but, she's achieved a lot at her age. I need to read some Facebook comments because...
I have a slightly contrary view on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Haq. Let's hear what you have to say.
I don't think that the diaspora, this thing about changing one person at a time, I don't agree with that. I think if the diaspora has anything valuable to do, and quite frankly, diaspora itself has its own problems. Diaspora also is not, quite clear about its own objective, but we won't go into that. The point about the diaspora, if they have any role to play, they must incentivize reform in this country. It's not a question of fixing one person at a time. We must change the system that has been hanging around for 20 years. It's at the root of all problems of Pakistan. It's at the root of bad governance. It's at the root of everything, because in everything, the system does not recognize merit, and we must go for the reform. We put it up in the Planning Commission, the reform of the civil service, the reform of cities, the reform of the way we govern ourselves, that must happen. Pakistan has to be brought kicking and screaming into the modern world through changing its system.
How do you start reforming the civil service?
It's very simple and straightforward. First of all, let's pay them as the modern system pays. In this case, the civil service is paid very little over the table. The government itself pays them everything under the table. They're given cars, the electricity bills are paid, they're given houses, they're given land, they're given all kinds of freebies by the government under the table. Let's make the compensation clear and transparent on the table. Secondly, let's make sure the civil service positions are competed for internationally. In the UK also now the secretary positions are competed for. Why can't we do the same thing? You do these two things, you'll have a big change in the system. That will bring merit in. Sufyan will then want to compete to be the secretary in Pakistan. That's what we want.
I can't even get a regular job, Dr. Saab. I tried so hard to land a job in Pakistan.
Right now, I'm sorry, Sufyan. Right now, Sufyan, you're persona non grata. We don't want you there.
But
if we want reform, then yes.
I agree with you, but at the same time, I'm also thinking that there are certain higher education universities in Pakistan which are doing significantly well. I think there's a lot that we can learn from there. And coming back quickly to students who want to come to the US just like you did, or just like I did, I think that they're solely focused on their individual efforts, right? There are no career advisors. I go here to different universities. I see a lot of, at Carnegie Mellon where I went, we have a number of career services individuals who tell you how to navigate through. I'm not sure if we have that in Pakistan. I think
we don't have that in Pakistan.
I think we must have that, right? And not just to go abroad, because I think that's not a good idea anyway. You're losing your most essential fresh blood out to somebody else. You've just nurtured these kids like me and you, and then you've left them to go outside. So I don't know what we are doing as professionals as well, right? How do we go and engage with these students and say,
Sufyan,
yes.
Sufyan, sorry for cutting in. But look, quite frankly, you know, you've been abroad to study, I went abroad to study, and quite frankly, when you study, you're basically doing an apprenticeship, right? I could go to a university of God knows where, or I could go to Cambridge or Oxford or, you know, Harvard or Chicago, whatever. You go to a good university. Why? It's an apprenticeship. You work with the best people.
Yes.
And why is the US doing so well? I mean, you can see even Steve Jobs, everybody's talking about it. They want to change the, Bill Gates, not Steve. They want to change the immigration law of the US. Why? Because they want to attract people of merit.
Yes.
I've been arguing this for 20 years. Why can't we bring in people of merit in Pakistan? Now, take Dubai, for example. What is Dubai doing? Dubai is taking the best brains in the world.
Yes.
Every country, this in the year 2013, in the 21st century, it is a game. It is a game of competing for merit. It is talent competition.
The human capital is more important than the other. Let me quickly read some Facebook comments before our time is up.
Sure.
Shahid Khan says people don't return to Pakistan because of lack of better opportunities, low salaries, no merit. We've talked about that. Talking about what would bring people back to Pakistan, one person, Abrar Hussain, suggests special quotas for foreign graduates. Dr. Haq, would that help?
No, not at all.
No quotas.
We'll use it to bring our own brothers and sisters from third-rate universities.
Yes.
So everybody on Facebook is agreeing with you. There's no merit in Pakistan when they go back. Nobody wants to talk about merit. Asim, very quickly, in 30 seconds, if you go back to Pakistan, how will you do things differently because you've been abroad?
I might struggle more. Based on experience of my friends, what I've heard from my friends, they've been looking for a job and they're not even getting a job for like past 1 year. I mean, I don't know what I'll do, but I'll struggle hard. One thing I've learned over here, staying over here, is to struggle for your own self individually without the help of your parents.
Right.
That's what I would do over there, but looking on whatever's going on, I don't think, because my friends are over there, they haven't gotten a job yet, so I'm afraid.
20 seconds, Sufyan. Do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that I think we should stop looking to the government. I mean, it's very important, it's significant, but I think if each one of us took responsibility for what we are capable of doing, I have seen a number of success stories in Pakistan. I think that, again, I understand it's a bigger issue, but find somebody who can mentor you, find a sponsor, and find somebody who can
do
help
what you can. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I have to wrap up. Obviously, a lot of passion and interest in the subject. We may come back to it, but right now, I need to thank our guest, Dr. Nadeem ul Haq. He used to be with the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics as well as the Planning Commission of Pakistan. Sufyan Ahmed, he's a recruiter here in U.S. We had two students with us, Mohammed in Riyadh and Asim here in our studios in Washington. Thank you very much for watching. Keep sending your questions, comments, and suggestions. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Until next time, goodbye.